Good evening, High Point. Pastor Keith here. High Point friends here locally and extended family around the world. Super excited to be back with you tonight for our Wisdom Wednesday. If you will bear with me here for just a quick second while if you've been on a Wisdom Wednesdays, you know I have to go find it on our page. All right, awesome. Okay, cool. So, welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. We are in week 3 of discussing how to handle social distancing and lockdown, and hopefully pretty soon, from what we've heard from the recent announcements from our governor, re-emergence at some level, obviously in a safe manner and all those kind of things. But so handling social distance, re-emerging from this, and everything that goes into it through and based on your unique personality type. We've been talking through the Myers-Briggs, using that as sort of our baseline. Give me just a quick second. I'm going to try to pull this video up. I think I jacked it up here. Give me a quick second to find it. But we've been using, I'll keep talking while I'm looking for it. We've been talking through using the Myers-Briggs. If you remember the first week, which is available here on our page, we discussed the Myers-Briggs scale of extrovert versus introvert, where you get your energy from outside of yourself or from internal to yourself. Last week we talked about the type of information around you that catches your attention, the sensing versus intuiting. Sensing with your 5 senses, very practical, tangible, concrete, real. Intuitive, a little bit more gut, kind of your hunch. Awesome, good to see you guys. I see Tina is here, thinker all the way. Doesn't even have to hear the definitions, and Tina's self-describing as a thinker. Hi Tink, how are you? Nika Sue, glad you're here. Val and some others, good to see you guys. Tonight we are going to look at a facet about how we make decisions. Hi April, how are you? How we make decisions, and it's going to be a thinker versus feeler scale. Now before we go too far into tonight's topic, I want to just let you know, when you're thinking about this idea of personality, particularly with Myers-Briggs, any type of personality inventory where you have sort of 2 ends of a scale. The further you are toward one of the poles or toward one of the ends of the scale, the greater likelihood that you're going to have difficulty understanding or comprehending what somebody at the other end of the scale has. And it's just because you live kind of in far in one direction, and when you turn, the idea that somebody sees the world so completely, literally opposite than you can be a little bit challenged. If you kind of find yourself going, I'm probably tilt towards one, but I could see it the other way, the more closer you are toward the middle, the more ease you're going to have at understanding that there are people that have maybe a slightly different viewpoint. Another thing to keep in mind is, particularly if maybe you're in a married setting, or hey, Dave from Augusta, good to see you, Dave Whitehead. Seth, glad you're here. If you are at the, where was I going with this? The other thing that can happen is sometimes we can see somebody who views the world differently than we do, and we can think it's a choice. Something that's hardwired by God, we can look at, and we can think that maybe we can infer motive. Like, we'll take last week's example, sensing versus intuiting. Literally, how you look at the world. A sensor is looking at it through their 5 senses, and they see somebody that's not viewing it that way, and you can think, they're just doing that to push my buttons. If they really cared or they really tried, they'd be able to see the world my way. They're not putting in effort. We can infer motive, when really what we're seeing is what we talked about last week, this God thread that's hardwired into each one of us in our personality. So the key to whichever facet of personality we're talking about, the key to getting along with people, honestly, is recognizing that people are different and appreciating their differences. So tonight we're going to talk about one facet of personality, the scale of how we make decisions. And we're going to be using a T, thinker, and F, feeler. So it's how we make decisions. If I am a thinker, this is the type of information that comes into play. It's going to be empathy for the feelers versus like a standard objective versus thinkers. Another way to think about it, thinking versus feeling, would be deciding with your head or deciding with your heart? So what type of information do I take into account when I go to make decisions? The thinkers are going to make our decisions based on logic, make your decisions based on rationality. You prefer maybe to deal in like objective reason, maybe logic. You don't get personally involved in your decisions if you're a thinker. Feelers, on the other hand, tend to make more value-based decisions, kind of based on empathy. Maybe you're making your decisions based on compassion. You're going to think through how your decisions are going to impact others and make others feel. You're going to make your decisions, if you're a feeler, based on kind of a person-centered values. And feelers tend to get personally involved in their decision. Again, there's a decision being made with the heart and considering the heart of others. Thinkers, deciding with your head, rationality, not emotionally or personally invested in the decision. It's just a left column is larger than the right column, left column wins. So imagine you're, going to buy a new house, right? And you have factors that you consider that you want in a house. So a thinker is going to go, left column is going to have their budget, square footage, number of bedrooms, ... and right column. And if the left column outweighs the right column, a thinker goes, it's a good decision, we buy the house. A feeler, on the other hand, wants to walk into the house and just kind of go, it feels like home. May not fit the budget, but it feels like home. You wanted 4 bedrooms, but this only has 3, but we can make it work because it just feels like home. I could see raising the kids here, for example. So we're making a decision about a large purchase, for instance, and the thinker is going left column versus right column, a little bit detached, and is going, do I have the proper data? I'm not getting personally invested in the decision, where a feeler is going to get a little bit more personally invested and kind of decide with the heart. So one way to consider this is imagine you're in the unenviable position of having to fire somebody. This is often how I help people come to the best realization of this. You have to fire somebody. Okay, here's how a thinker fires someone. They look and say, are they getting the job done? Yes or no? If the answer is no, you're fired. And they move on. Because it's based on clear-cut logic. I have parameters you need to be hitting. If you're hitting them, you're hired. If you're not, you're fired. Here's how a feeler fires someone. Oh gosh, I know they're not maybe producing like they could, but there's probably things going on in their life. Could we reposition them, because this is going to be very difficult, because like our kids play together in the soccer league on the weekend, but I know they're not getting the job done, but they're a nice person. So if you have to fire them, you just sort of maybe try to reposition them or talk to them in such a way that they decide to fire themselves. Because there's emotional weight, we're connected, and I'm really thinking about how you're feeling about this decision. When a thinker fires somebody, you know what? They don't stay up worried about it all night before. They sleep like a baby. They get up, they walk in, they fire the person, and at the end of the day, they sleep like a baby. A feeler that has to fire somebody is up all night thinking about the decision, how it's going to make the other person feel. Is this going to hurt our friendship? And then when they go to fire him, it's just sort of like, it just hurts their heart. And then that next night they don't sleep well, recounting the conversation. Little bit of a difference between thinker and feeler. I know some of you have already jumped in, but let me hear what you think you are. Thinker versus feeler. Let's see. All right. Mario, feeling it. Nika, in the feels. All right, we got a couple feelers. Let's see what else we've got. We have a big hello from Saskia. Vicky White, you're a feeler. All right, so it's how we're making decisions. Jennifer Tower, you are a feeler. I can vouch for that. Tink, a feeler. Look at all you nice, compassionate Christians. Where's a nice, cold-hearted thinker? There we go, April Taylor. Thank you so much for joining me over on the dark side. All right. A compassionate thinker. Okay. Yeah, good. Carly's a thinker. Chloe is a feeler. That's how it works in the Tower household. Thinkers versus feelers. I'll tell you how this played out in one situation for us. Jennifer is a feeler. I'm a thinker. And the Lopez family, a bit of both. Yeah, fantastic. All right. So we're both. So Jennifer's a feeler. I'm a thinker. Pretty clear cut in how we make decisions. we had decided we had 2 dogs, and well, let me just say it like this: if it is small, furry, and smells bad, we've had it. From a pet perspective, we've had guinea pigs and gerbils and hamsters and cats and dogs, and if it's small, furry, and stinks, we have had tons of it. And because our kids love them so much, and we love our kids and all that kind of good stuff. So there was a time where all of the guinea pigs had kind of worked their way to sort of guinea pig heaven, and we were down to 2 dogs, and one of them went off to doggy heaven. And so we had 1 dog left, and he's already kind of getting a little bit old, not getting around super well, and can't hear, half blind, and doesn't have many teeth left. And Jennifer and I our kids were starting to get a little bit older, and we're thinking there'll be a day where we'll be empty nesters, and won't it be nice if the rest of our pets go to little pet heaven, and we'll get to see them someday in pet heaven, and yay for that. But we would have an empty house. And so we had decided how nice that would be to, not kind of keep re-upping pets. There was a time where I was on a road trip, and Jennifer sent me an email. And it kind of went something like this: hey, so I heard from our pet boarding place. And I'm like, what did we hear from the pet boarding place? Well, there was a family, and they got in a difficult financial position, and they needed to get rid of their dog. And okay, that's too bad for them. And I know, but the place where we board our dog sees what great care we take of our animals, and they needed a new home for this other dog. And I'm going, we've talked about this. We decided we were not adding any more pets and any more additional, fluff to our life. And she goes, oh, no, I know. But, they sent some pictures, and, so I showed the pictures of the dog to the girls, and I'm like, we already have the dog, don't we? She's like, yeah, I picked up Bear this afternoon. So we had decided that we weren't going to have dogs, but she's also deciding out of our heart, and she showed the pictures to our daughters. So now we have 3 hearts involved, and what a great decision this would be, in my rational brain going, but we thought, and of course, we now have a dog that might live forever and outlast us. Anyway, so that's the difference between thinkers and feelers. Thinkers are deciding based on rationality. Feelers are deciding based on heart and emotion. Now, sometimes we can look and the topic we covered last week, sensing and intuiting, can sound very similar to thinking and feeling. Let me delineate this here just for a second so there's no confusion and we can understand the facet we're talking about tonight. Last week, sensing versus intuiting, it's the type of information just that you generally take in from the world. Sensors, it's fact, it's concrete, it's tangible, it's the world of what practically is. Intuitives, it's the world of what could be. It's not necessarily, I can't tell you why I know it, I just sort of do. I kind of have a sense or a hunch. Now, one might think that a sensor, practical, tangible, the type of information I take in is in the realm of what is. You might think that you're naturally a thinker when it comes to decision making. Two different things. A sensor is taking in the type of information that captures their attention is practical and tangible, but that's not necessarily the same as what information you choose to incorporate when you make decisions. So it's very possible that a sensor could also be a thinker and an intuitive could be a feeler, but it's also possible that they're crossed. We have 4 people in our household and we have every one of those 4 combinations. My oldest daughter is a sensor thinker. Practical, tangible, what is, and when she goes to decide, she decides with her head. Jennifer is a sensing feeler. So the type of information that she processes is practical, tangible, what is, but then when she goes to decide, she's incorporating her heart and emotion into the decision. I am an intuitive thinker. So I can't tell you why I know what I know, I just sort of know it. But when I go to decide, man, it is left column, right column, black and white. There are right decisions and there are wrong decisions, and it's based on data. And then we also have our youngest daughter is a is a intuitive feeler. So it's gut and hunch, and I can't tell you why I know, I just sort of know. And then when she goes to decide, it is all heart and based on feelings. So those can be multiple combinations there. So what does this have to do with, and how does this play out with regards to us? Oh, Tanja, sweet puppy. Yeah, very sweet puppy. Amazing. Okay, we have lots of dogs. April, an intuitive thinker as well, right? Awesome. So you're feeling me, or you're thinking just like I'm thinking. You get it, and you can't explain why. It's just sort of a gut hunch. Anyway, okay. So let's take a look at how this plays out with regards to. We've been talking about social distancing. We've been talking about, being locked in the house together. Now there's conversation about here in Florida anyway, and I know we have some friends from Augusta, Georgia. Things opening up. How are we going to start to make decisions as thinkers and feelers, and maybe having multiple people in the household? I would say this. Consider, if you're in a multi-person household, consider who needs to be making what decision based on whether they're thinkers or feelers. Like, for instance, difficult interpersonal decisions. There might be more nuanced information being brought in by a feeler, because they're thinking through how this is going to impact the person that's in an interpersonal decision. However, when it comes time to make an interpersonal decision, that can be very difficult for a feeler, because they are thinking through, from an empathy perspective, they're thinking through the ramifications of that decision on lots of different people, not just the situation, but how it's impacting people. So difficult and challenging interpersonal decisions are made by feelers. It's difficult. They bring in the right information, but then actually making the tough call that's going to impact people is tough. So in many ways, a thinker can be a more effective decision maker in interpersonal decisions, at least from the perspective of being able to make things happen decisively and maybe a little bit more directly. So think through who might want to make one type of decisions. One thing to keep in mind with regards to thinkers and feelers is sometimes thinkers can come off, if you're not careful and you're not intentional, you can come off a little bit cold. Because when it's time to make decisions, it's very impassioned, or it's dispassionate. So all the passion goes out the window, and all of a sudden we just kind of freeze up. It's the old, Don Corleone, it's not personal, it's just business. Like, we can make very calculated, sometimes cold or difficult decisions, and you just want to make sure it doesn't come off cold. If you're finding yourself in a household, maybe where two parents and you're both thinkers, just be mindful of the types of decisions. You're probably making them quickly. You're probably making them very factually. If you have children that are not thinkers, they might be perceiving you during this season of time as uncaring and a little bit cold. So just be kind of careful. That's how sometimes thinkers can come off. If you're used to, maybe you're multiple people in the household and you're used to being out in the workplace. I know this happens to me quite a bit, because at church there's sometimes where I've got days where I'm stacked up with meetings and I'm just having to decide stuff, and it's like that. And then I come home, to my happy, smiling wife and daughters, and they want to talk, and I'm just going that. I'm in black and white mode. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm just coming off as like, just telling and not asking and not, what do you feel about it? I'm just, boom, 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 I'm in black and white mode. Now, if you're working from home and you haven't normally spent these large chunks of time with one another, and you're a thinker, the people around you might be going, oh, someone's feeling a little mean today, or someone's feeling a little blunt today. So just be mindful. If you're a thinker, sometimes that can come off just a little bit. April, poor Carrington, she lives with thinkers and she is not. I'm going to help you with that. Now, if you're a feeler, here's something I want you to just keep in mind as you're feeling your way through decisions that you're making. If you're not careful, sometimes feelers can find themselves taken advantage of. And here's why. Because you're agreeable. When people ask you to do things, you consider, well, if they're asking me to do it, it's probably because, they want me to help, or they're too busy, or they think I'm going to do a good job, and you put yourself in their shoes, and why are they asking you? And you don't want them to feel bad for asking you. You don't want to disappoint them. So naturally, your answer when you work your way around to the decision, even if you're too busy, even if you don't want to, even if it's a violation of, okay, sure. Yes. We work our way to yes because we're considering the other person oftentimes more highly than ourselves. Not that we think low of ourselves, but you just have a natural way to put yourself in their shoes. And now you're finding yourself locked in a household with people that are asking you stuff and asking stuff of you, and they want you to decide, and Mom, is this okay? Or hey, Dad, can I do this? Or whatever, or you're asking your children to help or to pitch in differently, or whatever it might be. And one of the challenges for feelers is holding a sense of boundaries, because again, they assume if you're asking, you really want them, and they're considering your feelings. Now, that's fine if it's once or twice. That's fine if it's every now and then. But if you've got multiple people locked in your household, you have a lot of people asking their feelers a lot of times. And while your one request might not overload them, 4, 5, 6 different people's requests can overload them. And you never know when you're the straw that broke the camel's back. Thinker or feelers, if you need to enlist a thinker from time to time to help you make decisions and help you set boundaries, we do this in our household quite a bit. Jennifer will often go, okay, I've got this and this and this. I really want to be a part of all of those. Help me decide what's most important. And as a thinker, I can look at the decisions before her and go, that's too much, cut that, change that, tweak this, here's your decision. And now she didn't have to make it, I helped make that for her. And now, because naturally it might be a little bit difficult for her to figure out what are those maybe interpersonal boundaries as people are asking her. Now, here's how a feeler can really help a thinker. Because sometimes there are really good and really right decisions that don't make sense. I'll give you a perfect example. Where our house is compared to when our kids were back in middle school and grade school and high school, it was about a 30-minute drive from our house to our school. And it's probably a 20 to 30-minute drive from the church to the school. And so we would drop the kids at school, and there would be times where, I would drive to church, and Jennifer would say something like, I just really feel like, feeler language, I just really feel like you should go meet the kids for lunch today. Here's how my thinker brain thinks through that decision to go to lunch. It's a 30-minute drive for a 20-minute lunch and a 30-minute drive home. Left column, hour in the car for a 20-minute lunch. Practically speaking, thinkery thinking, that's not a good use of time. It's not a practical, logical use of time. But who knows that when a daughter needs her daddy, logic doesn't matter. The most important thing is being present. And as a thinker, it's very easy for me to look and go, that doesn't practically make sense that I would drive over there to buy, grade school cafeteria French fries when I could save time and, do whatever it was that I was going to do. But as a feeler, Jennifer is able to look in their eyes and go, I don't have the left column versus right column. I just know in my heart they need their dad for this lunch period. And every time I listened to her perception of an interpersonal situation and yielded to that and said, okay, doesn't make sense, not practical in terms of just sheer left column versus right column, it always worked out well because it was 9 out of 10 times related to a matter of the heart. So super, super grateful that we managed to work together on that. All right, let's see if there's anything else I wanted to jump in. Okay, so what does this mean here in lockdown? Well, there's various types of decisions that you guys are going to be needing to make. We're all making these decisions. Here's one that comes up, right? When are we going to start to emerge from the house as things start to open up. Our governor mentioned today that on Monday, we're moving to phase 1, which means that things across Florida are going to start to open up a little bit differently. That was his decision based on whatever he factors in. And if you happen to have watched that decision today, he kept using this term fact over fear, fact over fear. What does that tell you? He's a thinker when he makes decisions. And he put up charts and he put up numbers and he put up graphs. It wasn't like he wasn't emoting and telling us stories like sometimes you see maybe from a politician on the campaign trail or a contestant on, a baking show where they tell you like, oh, this was my grandfather's favorite recipe. Or let me tell you about Bob, who I spoke to in Des Moines, Iowa, and blah, 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 blah. It wasn't story-based. It wasn't anecdotal. It was factual. It was charts. So our governor was talking about fact versus fear, and he made a thinker decision that now, or starting Monday, we can move to phase 1. Now you have to also simultaneously make a decision. What is a thinker going to think about this? How's a feeler going to feel about us emerging out into this brave new world as it currently exists? These are things that we have to think through. As a thinker, you're probably going to be looking at data. May I suggest you get good data, because data is going to drive your decision. So get what's happening versus what was pre-modeled, right? Go look at what's current versus what's old, and that'll help you think through a good positive decision. In whatever direction you choose, that's 100% up to you. And there's more data than just numbers. There's data of who in our household, risk factors, et cetera, et cetera. But you're going to think through and analyze those and decide what's best for you or for your family. A feeler is going to probably kind of decide based on interpersonal judgment. You know what? I have a friend who owns a restaurant. I've been thinking about how difficult this has been for them. And you know what? I'm going to go visit their restaurant, right? See, the decision there is based on, I know a friend who, I'm considering them, and my patronage might be worth a risk that's different than the data because I'm supporting and helping a friend. Now, what if we have multiple decision makers trying to decide when your family or household should emerge? May I suggest we consider others more highly than ourselves? Being mindful thinkers that you're going to think you're right. And be mindful feelers that you're going to feel that they're being uncaring. So just know where your natural proclivity might come. Thinkers, you sometimes in moments like this might come off as, what's the right word? Well, I can tell you as a thinker how I come off, maybe arrogant in my surety of my data, and this is the right thing to do, this is what we're going to do. That doesn't always work when we're talking about a hot button emotional issue like when we now start to come out and what it means for people in our community who are high at risk, right? So we've got to think through these things and sort of feel our way through these things. This is how we're doing it here at the church, deciding when we'll be starting. It's data and feel, right? It's a little bit of both as we try to make decisions. Some other decisions you have to make that we're all having to make. We've got to make financial decisions. What is this going to look like if we're having to cut our budget? What type of things are we going to cut? What type of things are we going to say yes to? What type of things are we going to spend our money on when things are we're all feeling just a little bit tighter, and we're all feeling just a little bit like, maybe I don't have as much, whether I do or don't. It feels that way. There's a sense of uncertainty with things financially. So a thinker is going to probably pull out a spreadsheet, probably look at, what's most important from a essential to live, and kind of start to trim down or start from zero and build their way up. But it's going to be very practical and very logical how we're making those decisions. And that's certainly one valuable way to look at your finances Here's another way. I know it may not be the smartest investment, but I kind of feel like we need to buy whatever. We've bought some random things. Not huge, not massively expensive, but we bought a set of ping pong paddles and balls. We don't even own a ping pong table, but we just felt like we needed to do that. We bought darts, and we have a dartboard now hanging up in our garage. Just small expenditures. I've eaten more ice cream in the last, several weeks than I have in the last several years. And a lot of that's been the decisions of the feelers in my house going, you know what would be good right now? The thinker in me is going, oh my gosh, I don't know what our budget's gonna look like. That's a whole $10. But the feelers are going, you know what we need? And I can't really tell you why. I just kind of know in my heart, ice cream would make us all happier. So you're gonna need to make some of those financial decisions. Yeah, Jennifer, and we actually used our kitchen table for our ping pong table. So we didn't want to buy a ping pong table, we bought paddles. We laid a broomstick across it to be the center point, and we played the world's most cutthroat game of ping pong ever played over a kitchen table. Anyway, so our thinkers are going to be deciding with their head, our feelers are going to be deciding with our heart. Chances are, unless you're all alone in your household, there are others who might make decisions differently. Just because they make them differently doesn't mean that they're cold, doesn't mean that they're weird, doesn't mean that they're careless. It means they're different. And one of the most beautiful things that God has given us is people around us that are not us. To add breadth to us, to add wisdom to us, to add balance to us, to add beauty to the world, to add warmth, to add boundary, to add compassion, to add strength. So as you're looking at making decisions, thinkers and feelers in your household, may the first thing you decide is that Jesus would be Lord of your home. The next thing you decide is whoever you're deciding with is of infinite value to God. So please consider one another's very, very highly. As we bring this to will you tell April about how thinker parents can deliver decision to feeler kids? Oh, great. Yes, I can. Thank you, Jennifer, for asking that. So, to thinker parents, to a feeler child. First, validate, I would say, speaking specifically to April in this situation, if we have two thinkers talking to a feeler, first is to recognize that your child's different. It's not just because they're young. It's not just because, in the case of Carrington here, she's a female or anything like that. It's because God has put a thread in her that's maybe different than you and Jason. And your jobs are very much, in emergency management, you have to make difficult decisions, and they're data-driven decisions that you make. I would say first, I would make a very solid shift from when I'm at work versus when I'm at home. The type of decisions you have to make as a thinker, in your case, April, at work, you make hard calls, and you make them based on data, and you make them based on protocol, and you make them based on models and redundant systems and practice and training. And now you're working from home, so there's not quite as much drive home shift that you would maybe make. But I would say before you re-engage with your family when you come out of work, make a mental shift that we're putting on mommy hat and we're putting on daddy hat, and we are clearly taking off work hat. Otherwise, for a small feeler that's looking up at large parents who would, I just look at the way that Carrington looks at you guys, and you all hung the moon, and she's going to be very, very influenced by the way that you guys relate to her. So for Jason, he can maybe make a point to get down literally, physically on her level. It'll take some of the size that comes with obviously a parent-child dimension, and then a thinker that can be very direct. This is the way it is. This is what's right. This is black and white. If we get down on a child's level, it's immediately going to soften some of those decisions. And I would maybe ask her what she thinks about something first. Major decisions that are clearly above a child's pay grade, just make those and don't worry about them. But something with regards to her, if we're talking about cookies or cake, if we're talking about playing with Barbies or playing with, having a tea party, I'd ask her what she feels like she would want to do, and then validate the type of decisions that she makes. Wow, that's a good decision. How did you arrive at that? Or, oh gosh, I love how you're considering the dog's feelings in this, or whatever it might be, right? So just give her little plugs and validate that she is a good decision maker, thinking with her heart. Man, I just love seeing just the compassionate heart that God put in you. If you drop her little validations like that, it'll help for those times where you may accidentally just sort of slip into command and control mode with decision making. I hope that made sense to that specific situation. Are there any other questions? Let's see. Tina, amen. Tink, good stuff. Thanks, Tink. I think it's good stuff too. And you would say your decision with a smile. Yes, absolutely. That's one thing that thinkers can do, is sometimes when we announce our decision, I know in my case, when I decide, if I'm not careful, my default face can look angry. Because as a thinker, I think. And when I think, I take this big, heavy Cro-Magnon man brow and I furrow it down. And I probably look angry, even though I'm thinking about how fun it's going to be to go to Disney. I might look angry even though I'm thinking about how I can't wait to go home and give my daughters a hug. Because I'm thinking about it. I can look too stern, I can look too serious. Now add to that, in your case, Jason, you're a dad to a daughter. In my case, I'm 7 feet tall. Watch your default face if you're a thinker. Smile. Smile while you're thinking, smile while you're deciding, smile while you're announcing your decision. Don't do it with thinking man brow, do it with feeler man face. Here's what we're gonna do. You're fired, right? So just do it with a nice smile as you do that. All right, anyway, hopefully you don't have to fire anybody. A couple quick things I want to remind you of. We got service this Sunday, and then starting on Monday, I know we got Star Wars people out there. Monday is May the 4th, as in May the 4th be with you. We are having a fashion show with prizes for grown-up Star Wars costumes, children's Star Wars costumes, pet Star Wars costume, and the most creative Star Wars costume based on random stuff you have in your household. So you need to take pictures, photos, fashion show of you, your family, your pet, however it is Star Wars related, and please send those right away, or sometime send them by Sunday evening, so ideally sooner than later, to admin@highpointorlando.com, admin@highpointorlando.com. On Monday, we are going to post all the photos that we got. We're going to open voting, and it is going to be awesome, and we are going to select our winners based on fan voting. So jump in, it's going to be a lot of fun. And then Tuesday, don't forget, it is the 5th of May, also known as Cinco de Mayo, also known as Taco Tuesday. We are going to have the Ocoee Taco Truck, here in our parking lot. You can drive through and pick up food. You'll drive through, you'll order your food, and then you'll work your way through our parking lot in your car, socially distant and safe, through our drive-up piñata. We have drive-up games. We've got drive-up all kinds of awesome stuff at drive-up photo booth. And by the time you've worked your way through our incredible Taco Tuesday experience, your tacos will be ready. It's a great chance to support a local business here who does a lot of different cool stuff with us here at the church, and it'll be a great time to see people and venture out of your house, and then just kind of keep your eyes open for other exciting things, and when we'll hopefully start doing some live services here at the church. So let's see, anything else? Any other questions? If not, I am going to pray for you, and then next week we are going to talk about our last facet of personality with regards to handling the social distancing and all the things that we have to do, and that will be with how you arrange your life in an organizing fashion or an adapting fashion. Are you a planner or are you spontaneous, and what does that mean with getting along with people that are stuck in your household and facing our reemergence back out into society? Lord, bless your amazing sons and daughters who are on this this live conversation. Bless them many times over. Help us to recognize that you've made not everybody like us. Thank God. You've made multiple billions of masterpieces, one of a kind, handcrafted, and your personality is the thread that you weave through us all. Sometimes we are pretty far in our direction. It's difficult to see that others would see the world differently. But help us. Help us to do so. Help us to consider others more highly than ourselves. Help us to make great decisions as thinkers, great decisions as feelers. And we love you. We thank you for guiding us through this crazy time that we live in. In Jesus' name, amen. Have an awesome night. Love you. Be blessed.